Dr. Rebecca Williams Dinsdale, who is the author of this wonderful book called Lifejoy. She's going to share something from this in a minute, and you've got another book coming out really soon, haven't you? Which is also really exciting. So we'll hear more about that. And Dr. Rebecca is celebrating a Festival of Lifejoy for the next 6 weeks. This is the first week, isn't it? Which is fantastic. So we're really lucky because we are one of the first sets of people to experience a bit of happiness in this group. So you want to share a little bit of your book, and then you can tell us a little bit more about who you are. You okay?
Lovely. Well, thank you for having me, Amy. It's a joy to be with you.
Good. It's lovely.
We've had such nice chats. We could just have the chat and the laughter and the banter and just record that. Do you think?
That would be nice.
Well, good afternoon, everybody, and a very warm welcome. It's a great privilege to be with you, and I hope what we share today will help you and encourage your own life joy. I try and encourage Lifejoy to have a loving purpose through books, through courses, through talks, and through gifts. So I thought I'd read you something from my first book to both set the tone and intention of our time together, but I hope to lift your spirits. So, my friend, thank you for the immense gift of yourself, for being by my side, inspiring, uplifting. I have so enjoyed our laughter and talks. My soul is richer because of you. You have been joyous, reliable, caring, sweet-tempered and gracious. Thank you for being pleased for me when things went well, and for being by my side when troubles hit. May you know 1,000 blessings, see hope in the eyes of other, feel wonder of all kinds, and know at the very deepest level, you are my family, my friend.
Oh, that's lovely. It's made me think of a very specific person.
Yes, I thought about, to whom would you wish to say that you have been glorious and I'm very glad you're in my life? Think about that.
Yeah, I'm going to go with my friend Tracy. Yeah.
Lovely. Well, that's the whole point, because in many respects, for the last decade and years before that, people came to me for the words, and we have lots of talented copywriters and writers that we know, but the words that they came to me for were often quite short sentences that said everything about how much they lived and loved.
Yeah.
And the phrases that I think are my powerful phrases to give to you are, you're my life joy. If you can say that to your child, to your spouse, to your mother, your brother, your sister, your best friend, your neighbour, your partner, that you give me the greatest joy. That is something wonderful, isn't it?
That is wonderful. Yeah, I love that.
And also at the end of every service I took, and I've taken nearly 1,000 loving funeral services in the last decade, is I almost said the same things. I said it in different ways to different people, and often that were appropriate. But what I encouraged them to do was to tell somebody, thank you for loving me so well.
Yeah.
And the epitome of that was, I will love you eternally. And that was about a life being well lived. And we live well when we love well. That was the epitome, the lesson of 1,000 funerals. It was never about external things. It was never about they lived in a 5-bedroomed house, they drove this car, they were the lead manager of the something title on LinkedIn.
Yeah.
It was always, they were the wisest, they were the bravest, they would belong to us, and we adored them. So that's really the loving purpose of what I try to share and what I offer in my little small bit of light.
I think it's quite a big bit of light. It's wonderful. So do you want to tell us a little bit about your story, because it's really interesting, and then we can dive into what you've got to share with us.
Thank you. You're lovely to say it's interesting. That's a good line.
so many little different interesting bits, and you've given me some bullet points. Obviously, I've heard you speak about it before, but it is really interesting. So go on, give us a little bit.
Well, I shall now use interesting instead of challenging or unique, any of those other words. It's a euphemism, interesting. It's lovely. It's lovely. I'm going to write, I am interesting. That's what I need to say.
Yes.
Well, any purpose or anything of worth that I have now has, without drama, emanated from immense challenge and long-term illness and what that has done. And if I can share anything, I can share perspective and proportion that I hope will help people manage their thinking and realize how capable they are, how joyous life can be. And it doesn't mean it's perfect or happy all the time, but that I did say to somebody once, a cracker's life. Crackers was the good word.
That's a good way too.
Yes. And one of my other key phrases is the wealth of normality. And I've got a free ebook if you want to download it from my website, because if you read that, I hope you won't be the same person by the end of it. Because I have had so little normality that I treasure it so much now that my husband usually says to me, don't gawp at people, because I can look at people and I think, oh, this is so, they're properly interesting. They have, jobs and hobbies and stairs to climb and pastimes, and the wealth of normal ordinary hours is a treasure that is so enormous and often so overlooked. And if lockdown is your first experience of really quite significant restriction in your life, and you've got to a reasonable age, then I would challenge you to think that that is quite a blessing, that you've waited till this age to be restricted by something none of us can control except our own good behaviour. So I have had, in many respects, and I say this in all humility, quite a lockdown life. Mm-hmm. So I was very fit and well, and I was an example of somebody effectively who did everything right. I was a good girl, I worked hard, I was reliable, I didn't drink, I didn't smoke, I never took any drugs. I adored my parents, I went to church, I was a SWAT, I was a square, that CV was looking good for childhood.
Sounds like me when I was little.
Sometimes I would apologise in advance just in case I did something I didn't know. I was a good little soul. I think about that a lot now. Slightly grubby kneed, a little bit tomboyish, bit of a chatterbox, but a treasure, I hope. Mm-hmm. And then at 17, I got glandular fever. And overnight, my physical health was ruined. And that was not something that was in the plan. I had planned to get very good A-levels, go somewhere posh to university, work in a giving profession, and hope that I would be of some use in the world. And suddenly, at 17, I had very severe ME. And then for the next 29 years, do the maths, you work out how old I am. Every decision has been predicated upon my physical health. Mm-hmm. Now, what does that mean? It means every holiday you've been on, I haven't been on. I've never been on a plane. I haven't had any children. I've never had a job, although I've always worked, if that makes sense. Yeah. There's many normal things I haven't done. I did tell our friend Peter from Ridge Tech that I'd never had a kebab, and I think he thought that was the most tragic thing in my entire life. No kebab.
I don't really fancy one.
I thought, allowed a kebab? I'm not sure it's the best thing. I don't know. But so I was very sick, and I was very sick for a long time. And what that meant was, at the start, I had between 12 and 40 weeks a year in bed or hospital for 20 plus years. And suddenly, when you're not able to function, you can hardly eat anything. Your neck, my glands were swollen from my jaw to my collarbone. And it was so painful and so tender. And now I quite like my neck. I'm very blessed to have one. I didn't have one for like a decade. And my hair got very long because I couldn't go and get my hair cut. I couldn't even get to the kitchen to have a hairdresser come. These are very small things of life. So what I did was the first early 5, 7, 8 years were the worst. Mm-hmm. And I ended up doing A-levels one at a time. And that became something of a joke because I went to school for 2 hours a week in a taxi. My friends carried my bag. I did my notes in the lesson and I went back to bed to just die effectively. It was grim. Mm. But like many of the great things in my life, I have had great sadness and restriction, but I have had tremendous love and support. And that unity has been the saving grace. Yeah. So if I were to tell you in 2 more sentences where that got me to now, I then did another A-level on no school time, just did all of that on my own. And when I was 18 and 19, I began to learn what were my Lifejoy tools to work very efficiently, very effectively on no energy and no health. So when people sort of complain about things now, I have a thought bubble in my head and I think, but darling, you're fitting well, just sort it out, you're capable. But, on 2 hours a week of school, I got good A-levels, top A-levels. So I thought there was something there. couldn't go away to university, and I was no better. So I would stay at home. I would go to university in Sunderland. I had places in Newcastle and Durham which I just couldn't fulfil because I couldn't walk about. And I also couldn't park the car. So we laughed about this yesterday, didn't we? I did the whole of my degree because where I could park the car outside the lecture hall and how far the walk from the car to the first seat was, it was that demanding. And you were quite surprised when I had said I had to change my courses a lot because I couldn't do courses that ran on consecutive days.
Yeah.
So effectively I did 1/6 time at university and was the biggest joke ever. It's like, oh, here's Snaily Beck, slow coach Beck. But I had some extra treatment and I managed through the most meticulous effort to get that up to a 3rd time. And a miracle happened. The university started to see that I was diligent and trying and in a mess. And they asked me to give talks to their students who, dare I say, had a bit too much happy hour and not doing any homework. Would I give them a talk to motivate them and help them be more resilient? And I wrote this talk, and I was suddenly back to being a 7-year-old who was a tomboy who was taking school assemblies and full of life. And just, there was electricity at my feet and I knew I was back.
Yeah.
But then I did the hour talk and I had to go to bed. And it's funny now, but it's not funny at the time. When you've got no life. Yes, and your poor mum's round the bend with worry. So I did my degree. I did well. I won a prize. The university liked me. Thank God. I loved them. They then offered me a master's degree. And by then I was doing regular talks for them. I was doing talks for the ME Society. And I was generally get Becca out the cupboard to cheer us up kind of girl. They then offered me a master's degree. And I did well through that. And then I did a doctorate. And, you know, I'm still having 20, 30 weeks a year in bed. So it was still very difficult. But at the end of that, a consultant told me, he said, you need to realise that you're unemployable. And that is a very difficult thing to hear when you're diligent and you want to offer something to the world.
Yeah.
And he said to me, he said, stop being unrealistic. And he shouted at me, he said, you have a complete lack of acceptance. And I nearly cried, and I don't blub in public. And I remember thinking, but you're making it, you told me when I was doing A-levels one at a time that I wouldn't get them. And I just thought, this is about somebody's judgment here. This isn't about their knowledge. So my dad was outside and he said, take no notice, pet, you've got a doctorate. That's really funny. And he said, once you've done that, he said, it'll be fine, you'll find a way through. So the essence of my story is that I didn't tell people how sick I'd been, because how do you tell people you didn't go to work till you were 36 and that, you know, going to the shower was often the only thing you could manage in a day, and that you had friends who are now still housebound, still bedbound. My friend Emily died and she was on fentanyl and a tube feed by the end. So, you know, there are very, very sick people, very sick children, very sick people who've been sick all their lives, and lots of chronic conditions that get completely overlooked. So I learned to not only count my blessings, but try and reciprocate. So by the end of all of that, I thought, what on earth can I do? Because he said I'm unemployable. But yet people were ringing me up to do talks. My friends were asking me to write their wedding speeches for them, and I won't tell you who they were. People were ringing me up for, give me the words, help me. So there was something. So what I thought was, I wrote a load of values down on a sheet, and we're going to talk about those in a minute. Yeah. And I thought, what if I were to self-employed, maybe I could do some talks somewhere or write something, and maybe I could be a bit of use. So I have to tell you, one of the reasons I love yellow is because my first ever client had a bright yellow jumper on. And I sat next to her and she said something, and I just said, but I can help you with that. And she said, really? And we're still friends now. And I said, I can help you. And she came for life coaching. And I said, I can help you. And she paid me, I'll never forget, £35 on a big check. And like, she'd had hours and hours. £35 was immense. And she just said, you've got to do more. Whatever you've got, just use a little bit. So I didn't cash that check for 3 months because I'm so pleased with it. And my dad said, you better cash that. And I thought, could I be self-employed? And something amazing happened was I did a bit of family tree, and all my family and my grandmother's side and my grandpa's had been self-employed. They'd all had businesses. And I want to show you a picture of my grandmother. Can you see? She's in the middle.
Yeah.
Now, let me tell you about self-confidence. That is my grandmother Ivy, who was in China as a medical missionary, and she went and learned Chinese in a year, and these are her students. She's teaching to be nurses, and she ran a mission hospital in the 1930s.
Uh-huh.
And I thought, well, if Gran can do that, I can have a little business.
Absolutely.
It's got to be possible. And how this relates to us today is that she was the quietest woman you have ever met on the planet. She would not take a library book back.
Uh-huh.
And I think some of my liveliness, hopefully, is the opposite of her.
Uh-huh.
And interestingly, what she said was, she'd just say, no, Beck, no, because she was always worried what I would do next. But what I want her to feel now in heaven is, yes, Beck, yes. So self-confidence, and this is the treasure of today. Think about it. Illness ruins your self-confidence.
Mm.
When the greatest joy of your day is that you've been to the bathroom yourself, that's not a lot of confidence. That you got dressed and you're on the bed and not in it, that's not confidence. So start from the tiniest measures of success. Now, I would say that my health has been really crackers, but it has improved, and I'm very grateful for that. But confidence is often built on external things, the job we have, the relationships we have, the home we live in, our titles, the outside stuff. Hello, how are you? What do you do?
Yeah.
Big, big points. And what illness teaches you, and 1,000 funerals, is that worth and confidence and value and generosity are inside jobs.
Yes.
And the outside stuff is beautiful. It's decorating on the cake, but the cake is the core. So I would say to you that self-confidence comes from, and I've written this on a nice arrow for you.
Oh, wonderful.
Knowing yourself is the first part. Knowing yourself well, the inside treasure that's just you. Then knowing that that has tremendous unique worth. There's nobody else on the planet like you. And 1,000 funerals teaches you that more than you could ever imagine. Then you get self-confidence. So it doesn't matter what house you live in, what car you drive, what you wear, what you look like. When your soul is shining, that is self-confidence. And finally, you can be self-generous. So you're generous to yourself mentally and emotionally, and you're generous with others materially. So there's a whole range. So the greatest thing we can do, I think, is our values. And I bet you talk about brand values a lot, don't you?
Tons. Yes.
Is that your favourite phrase?
It's something I talk about a lot, yeah.
It is. Well, let me start with the first route to self-confidence. And I tell you this because I had none. I was broken. And I can stand up in front of 800 people and take a funeral and not feel nervous, not feel worried, and know that my purpose of all the illness that I had had was to look after them, even if I had to go to bed for 10 days afterwards. And when all that stopped, that had to come into a new channel. So I would say, anybody who's listening, put your hands on your head now and feel your skull. Don't touch your face because you get an infection. Right, feel that. Press into your skull. And remember that you are fearfully and wonderfully made. And there's nobody else on the planet like you. And I'm going to tell you, if you're worrying about Christmas, you'll cope. If you're worrying about restrictions, you'll cope. You've coped with much bigger things before, and it could be 1,000,000 times worse, because I've got 1,000 people who would swap with you. So when you're in a stress and you've got no confidence, put your hands on your head and don't bury them. Put your face forward. That would be my first tip, hands on head. People talk about brand values all the time, don't they? Live your values. Yeah. So my most important values are health, unity, joy, and contribution. So think about what yours are, but then have manners in everything. So I've written some top tips for you.
Brilliant.
Know who you are. And in every interaction, be polite and pleasant. So I know lots of people who have lovely businesses, but they don't say good morning, afternoon, thank you, take care, every good wish, go safely. Top and tail every interaction in your work and life with manners, because it matters. That gives you some confidence because you're shining then.
Yes.
Be reliable, be on time, do what you'll say, and don't eat your breakfast on Zoom. It's not good. Now, here's a challenging one. When I say know who we are and that our language matters, I would say don't use unpleasant language, don't use unsavory words. Because I once had a funeral client ask me if they could have the worst word in the world in the flowers.
Oh, nice.
And I said no, and there was some discussion, and then I said, and they said, why? And the very fact I had to explain that that was not pleasant says everything. So in everything we do for our work and our lives, I would watch what we say, whether it's negative, positive, unsavory. That's showing who we are. Now, we treat people as well as we can, but we don't treat them well because they're famous or wealthy or pretty or famous or any of those things. We treat them well because they themselves are fearfully and wonderfully made, and they can feel their skull, and we need to treasure them, because if we are to have self-confidence, we have to offer it to others. So, are you ready for a bit of Blue Peter fun?
Go on.
Have you got your piece of paper, Amy Purdy?
I have, although I've already written loads of notes all over it, so I'll turn it over.
Well, there, my life is complete.
Yes.
Now, I'm going to use a piece of raggy old paper, because if it's raggy, it matters even more. So here's just a piece of raggy paper, and then just fold it into halves. And then fold it again. Now, this is the really good bit, and I have waited a lot of my life to say this. Here's one I prepared earlier. Now, put your name in the middle of a heart on the front cover. Yes, so you have a book.
Right, like this.
Lovely, yes. Beautiful. And I have stickers because I came prepared, but you might want to put some on later.
Sure, I can pinch some.
I think you might know somebody who's got one. Oh gosh, she's going to get some.
Right, these are rescue book stickers. Not as nice as yours, but they'll have to do.
Lovely. And just put
stars.
Yes, make it pretty.
There we go. There we go. I feel organised now.
Lovely. And then on the back, write your favourite quote to inspire you.
Ooh.
But you don't have to do it now, but think about it.
I'll think about it.
And then on the inside, we are going to make you a manual of life, joy, confidence.
Okay.
And I want you to carry your scrappy bit of paper around with you if you can. You could do the thing like when gnomes get kidnapped and say, look where my book is now, couldn't you? That'd be really funny. It's in Wall's End today. Anyway, write the numbers 1 to 5 on the inside, because this is your little book.
In 4 places.
Yes.
Okay.
Lovely. And we're going to give you some evidence that you look at when you're not feeling confident.
Ooh. Okay.
Because I tried to be an academic for a long time. And the big thing that academia teaches you, as many of our politicians would probably do well to learn, is what is the evidence telling me? Because my doctorate was in political science and conflict resolution. So you're always looking for evidence. And I've had to make so many difficult decisions in the last 29 years. I would say, what is the evidence telling me? What is the wisest move to go forward? And you keep making good decisions, and then you get good lives. Yeah. And I kept saying through all my funeral services, people who've made good decisions, you know, they'd understood self-discipline, they'd understood delayed gratification, they'd understood generosity. And then at the end, they were glorious. So 1 to 5, write down 5 things that are fabulous about you.
Do I have to do this now?
No.
I'll make note of
briefed you beforehand. I should have briefed you. Just put 5 fab.
Okay, this would make a great gift for a kid, wouldn't it? Once you like a
Oh,
pre-filled in
yes,
one.
yes.
Yes,
Well,
I do
in
that.
all the things that I do and offer, it's interactive. So in this first book, there are blank pages where you can write notes in. I love a scribble, help you think. And then I want you to write so that's 5 fab parts of you. And then I want your 5 superstar souls in your life.
Well, that's probably easier.
Yeah, it's better. It's a good one. But ask them what they would say your fab 5 were.
Okay, great.
And something to tell you about that is I've done funerals for people who had no family at all, no husband, no children, absolutely alone in the world. And I have a tiny family. I have my dad and I have my husband. But my people in that Lifejoy group of mine on Facebook, they are my family. They are my treasures. Now, I have seen people who have nobody, and yet their funerals were absolutely packed out because they were givers.
Yeah.
And people have walked up to me beforehand and said, they were so kind to me, they did this. They were so thoughtful, they did this. They were so generous. And again, they've lived well because they've loved well and they've been a giver. And they might not have 5 proper family kinship members, but they've built a family. So that's a tight thing to remember. Now, I want you to think about 5 things you can do to make something better. Whatever the thing is, and even if it's just donating a tenner a month to a charity, or ringing a neighbour, or reassuring a sick child, 5 things you can do to contribute, your fab 5 givers.
Great.
So that's fab 5 things about you, fab 5 people, fab 5 givers, and then I'm going to leave the last one to you, because you know what you need for your own confidence.
Yeah.
And I could give you like another 50 things to do. But the point here, and I thought this was so lovely, is that we're all a bit insecure, really, a bit. And some of us are a bit more messed up than others. And I am patron of a mental health charity, Headlight in Sunderland. Yeah. And the first time I ever went there was for a lecture on resilience. And the speaker had not turned up. I just went because there was a speaker. I didn't know anything about any of it. I just had to learn about being more resilient. And I'll never forget, the speaker didn't show up. And I remember thinking, well, that's not very resilient. But at the time, I was at my most broken because my mum was in hospital. She had early onset dementia in her 50s. And I can honestly say any ill health I have had or difficulty, what happened to her was horrific. So not only have I had a ton of illness, I've done 1,000 funerals, I have looked after somebody who is about as ill as it's possible to be. And that went on for 14 years. So when people are worrying about Christmas and what they'll do, is if you've had Christmas in a hospice or 7 years on the trot in a nursing home, you will not worry about going to a few less parties this year. It doesn't matter, if that gives us a perspective. And I went to that lecture at Headlight because I was so desperate to keep going through that tremendous hardship. Nobody turned up to speak. And I took my dad, and my dad knocked the bloke on the arm and he said, Beck will do it for you. And that was the start. I'm confident Beck will do that for you. Now, he's a tremendous speaker and the bravest man on the planet. He's a much better speaker than me. But he had confidence in me. And they just rang me up the next week and said, would you come and do some training with us? And I thought, oh. And that was my first ever group job. And I didn't charge them because they were a charity. And I've had 10 years with them. And I can honestly say that that place is a light to the world. So when I went there for the first time, it was upstairs and my heart sank because my breathing was terrible. My heart rate was terrible. My blood pressure was very, very low. I could hardly eat anything, and stairs were like the biggest nightmare. Didn't matter how much you practice them. So I went up one set, and by the halfway point, I was gasping and thinking, I've got to stand up for an hour and a half. Yeah. And a wonderful man came to help me. And he said to me, are you frightened of the stairs? Because I am. And he was frightened of going upstairs for an entirely different reason. And he said, come on, we'll go together. And he thought I had a psychosis about stairs. And I didn't, I just couldn't feel my left side. But the pair of us in that moment were so profoundly connected. And I think he might have been homeless as well. I mean, you couldn't have had a greater extreme. I couldn't get up the stairs. He couldn't face the stairs. We were at that moment exactly the one thing. So I was very insecure and worried that people would think, oh, she's useless. She can't walk up the stairs. And he was there to help me. And I said to him, don't worry. I said, I'll be there at the top with you. So that was the whole point of insecurities. What we look like, what we do, what we've got, how tall we are, thin, fat, short, whatever we are fearfully and wonderfully made. So write your 5 things down that you know are twisting on,
yes,
and untwist yourself a bit and see your own worth.
Wonderful. I would definitely fill that in later. I think some of that I could fill in now, but I'd like to do it properly. It's nice handwriting, you know.
Yes. Well, we probably know a few people who could sell us some nice pens.
Yes, I think we do, definitely. And yeah, I'm looking for a nice pen, Daniel. But yeah, so if you're watching this at any point, like now or later, it would be really great if you could maybe put a photograph of you just of the cover, because I don't imagine anyone would want to share the inside with it. But you could pop that in the comments, that would be really nice. Or maybe if you could share your favourite quote that you're going to put on the back. That might be really nice. Actually, I think
Yes,
that would be better. I would like to see some favourite quotes. Yes, I think mine is actually something my auntie, an auntie I never met, used to say, except it's such a long time since I've said it, because it's something I used to say with my gran. I can't. I'm struggling suddenly to remember how it starts, so I'll try and remind myself. But it's about eating food and having had an excellent sufficiency of enoughness. That's it. Any more over exacerbation? No, can't remember. I'll have to ask my dad, because I haven't said this with my gran for ages, because she's got Alzheimer's now and she doesn't remember. But it was used to make me laugh. Wonderful. Okay, well, that was fantastic. Did you want to play some music, or did you decide not to do that?
Well, I think we've run over time a bit now.
A little bit.
A little bit. Do you know what? My husband calls it quacking.
Mm-hmm.
And I say, can I just walk behind you and talk?
Yeah.
Quack.
Why not? And then after that, you can tell us a little bit about your Festival of Lifejoy, because we haven't talked about that very much yet, and about all the things that you've got to offer.
Well, hang on a second. I will find this for you.
Wonderful.
I have my own playlist for you, and I've put Amy P.
Wonderful. I feel very special.
Now, I'm going to play you something, and I want you to remember the words in this, because what goes into us is as important as what comes out. Mm-hmm. And lots of people say, oh, you're very positive, Becca. And I say, I'm not positive, and I'm not a blind optimist. What I try to be is a joyous realist and a realistic joy person. Uh-huh. So this is what we listen for. And the reason I played that is in the midst of mega trouble, because, you know, as a planet, we're in a lot of trouble at the moment. Mm-hmm. Where can we say these are the good times?
Yeah.
And it's a quiet hour on a difficult day. Mm-hmm. And interestingly, somebody this morning said, in my prayer morning group, said they were very upset because they couldn't go swimming for a month. And my first reaction was, and it's so interesting, was, thank God you've been able to go at all. Yeah. And that's because the thing I most want to do is go swimming and running and go in the sea with Tina. And it's still a long way off. Mm-hmm. But the fact that we'd even had the prospect of going swimming and you know, obviously the difficulties we have, but to find the good times in the day, that you could go in the shower, you can get dressed, you can put your own shoes on, you can see people you love and they can see you, and you can function. Just be pleased you can function. And I think that gives you good times, and that's why I chose it.
Yeah, oh, definitely. Lovely. I want us to start in the same way again, will I? I was thinking about you. Fantastic. Okay, so Right, we are over time, but I don't mind. So just take your time and tell us a little bit about your inspiration for the Festival of Lifejoy, and then I know you've got loads of different things that we can get a hold of to help us celebrate it a bit more ourselves as well. So tell us about that too.
Lovely. Well, celebration is an odd word, isn't it? Because it's nearly always associated with parties or, you know, events and big days. And having done all those services, I chose my words very carefully, and people would say it was a celebration of somebody's life. But I wanted to call it a service of loving appreciation.
Yeah.
Because we were saying, thank God they belong to us. What a blessing they came to us. And hopefully we've been a blessing to them. So the word celebration is very interesting. It's one of your words, interesting. So I decided that I had to stop all of my work in the pandemic. And that was difficult because it had taken me till I was 36 to get there. I'd worked very hard for 10 years. And being able to go to work was enormous. And when that all had to stop, I thought, oh, not again. Got to start from scratch again. And then my dad said to me, he said, but darling, you're good at that. He said, you'll cope, you'll find a way through. So I thought, well, I'll write another book and then I might be able to do some things around that. And then all of the things in November, and it's getting extended now, which is a lovely thing, is something will be released every week to encourage your life joy. And we're having lots of talks and interviews like this, which is such a blessing. So thank you. But November is a dark month and we are in dark times. And I know everybody's watching the election today as well, aren't we?
Yeah.
So I thought we could create some of our own light. And I initially said I would have 15th of November as Life Joy Day. And that was the day I got sick when I was 17. And I thought, we're going to turn this round. We're going to make it good.
Yeah.
And then, interestingly, it just grew to being a week. And then it was 2 weeks. And now it's 6. So
that's because the joy is infectious. And
I hope so. I have some purpose in life.
Yeah.
So that will be Life Joy Day. So every week there'll be something released. And I had a lot of clients who bought my book, which I felt very grateful for. And they told me that it helped them through the joyous times and the difficult times, but helped them to help themselves.
Yeah.
So I thought, right, I'll write another book. We'll have a book launch. Lovely. That's coming soon at the end of November. But in the meantime, I had lots of people who listened to the things I said, but didn't particularly read books. So I tried to find things that would fit their needs. So I think the first thing was to have a Life Joy candle that just smelt divine and offered us our own light. So that was my first thing. My second thing is affirmation cards, and with quiet common sense wisdom to help you be more content and more capable. And when you're those things, you are inevitably more joyous. So there are affirmation cards.
Wonderful.
And then my husband, who thinks I have endless energy and numerous talents I don't have, said, just sew them a little sunflower bag each and put the cards in, and that'll be pretty. So I've sewn millions. Look, I'll just show you. I've sewn millions of these bags. Oh, you've got your bag.
Yes, that's my little bag.
So I've done that. But there's 32 cards in the set.
Uh-huh.
And the reason is there's one for every day of the month. So you don't have to wade through a book, but there's a spare one for you to give to somebody.
Oh, I like that. Yeah.
And I think you can give them all away if you want.
Yeah.
But just find one that somebody else needs, because there's a lost lamb out there who needs a bit of care from you. So that's week 2. Week 3, I'm going to be releasing, and they're already there. And, you can look now if you want, is online courses for Life Joy. And that's just a series of videos. There are 10 videos in each course to encourage your life joy. And the first one is on your life joy yourself. The second one is on self-confidence and worth, which is very much like today, but it's all deeper and more material. And the final one is helping people speak in public, because that's one of the things that people lack confidence in.
Oh yes, everyone's terrified of that.
They are. It's easy.
That.
I can help you. I promise you. Don't. Honestly, if you can have a chat with your pal, I can help you shine.
Yeah.
And then we've got mugs, because you can have a mug that says "You're my life joy" and give it to somebody with a lovely sunflower on. We have greetings cards as well, and we have a book. Yeah. And the book was written at the start of lockdown, because in Mint, which we all love, and Nicola runs it with such integrity and grace, and the whole team, she did a broadcast every day to cheer us all up.
Yeah, she's amazing.
And I think that kind of leadership needs backing up. And my dad ran a large organisation, and I was always very glad when people were helping him in some quiet way and seeing his integrity. So I thought, well, I'll write a blog every day to back her up and try and help people for my interesting life. So I wrote 100, and it was kindly suggested that this should be a book. And then again, my husband said, but darling, you could do one for every day of the year.
Don't you look?
No, and then he said you could make a big bag for those to go in.
Yes.
So there is a book, and it's called Your Lifejoy Year, an enriching thought for every day. And there are 365 meditations in there to help you shine and see your own worth.
Yeah. Which is such a, I think that would be a fantastic Christmas present, but also very good for selfish purposes. It's not selfish. It's not selfish at all to want to feel good about who you are. So I think that's really wonderful.
And it's to help you cope with difficulty, because I've had so much and I've seen so much that there has to be loving purpose from it. It's that simple. It's the fight back.
Yes, and I love that. So that's great. And I love the affirmation cards as well. They're still quite a new thing to me. I have a pack of cards that I pull out occasionally. But when I do that, I'm like, oh, this has been worth spending a few minutes to just get it out of the box. So
yes, well, I saw something, and this goes back to what we just said about values and how we behave. I saw some affirmation cards, and there was really nasty language on those cards. And somebody was very proud of that. And I thought, these are pure spirited things, and you need loving words on them.
yes.
And so mine are small because I wanted them to fit in your phone case or your pocket or your wallet.
Yeah.
And then they all just fit together to make a sunflower.
Oh, that's very nice.
It's hard to do it in the proportion to keep it close to you. But so, and by the end of all that, I have no fingers left and no joints. I have worked hard.
Yeah, it says she has a friendship set of affirmation cards. Yeah, these would be so lovely and really will go really well alongside the book and everything, in fact. So that's fantastic. So can we pre-order the book, or are you going to launch it and then we buy it?
Thank you for asking. That's such a kind question. Well, everything's available from me. So if you just message me. And also on the website, there's a page of giveaways. So if you're strapped for cash, if you're miserable, you just want a bit of something, there's a whole page. And I promise you, if you download the lot, it'll occupy you all afternoon. Yes. And I hope you'll feel a lot better from it. So if you sign up to the email list, there's a whole of those giveaways. And I think that's, a first resource that'll help people. And my website is www.drrebecca.org.uk.
I've already put that in the comments, so that's awesome.
Yes.
But yeah, speaking of giveaways, we were going to give away a book and we didn't actually decide how we were going to do that. But you said you had a plan, so I'm trusting that you saw that.
We love it when a yellow plan comes together.
Yes, accidents, wonderful.
Yes.
That's
well, Yes. Well, really, I ought to have some chunky beads on.
No, this is your thing, not mine.
Yes. But hang on a second, I have the same glasses.
Yes, we are practically twins.
Yes, well, if you would like to, please sign up to my email newsletter. The 100th person, because I'm very near to 100, the 100th person who signs up will have a book.
Brilliant.
And a handmade bag, because, you get a bit more. I always hope you get more than you expect, that you'll have that. If you just let me know, I'll let you know when you're the 100th, and something happy will come in the post.
Excellent. Well, that sounds great. So we can all go and do that. Great. So when you join the email list, you've got a Facebook group called Vibrant Lifelong Learning. So you go join that and go on the website and buy all the things so that we all feel enriched and happy. Yeah, that'd be awesome. So that's been fantastic. I'm really looking forward to filling in my little booklet with all my little things. I think I'm going to try and get my daughter to do it as well. I'll be able to do some of it for her, the first 5 bits. But she'll struggle with that.
And her 5 fab people, you have to be number 1. You and Daddy.
I might like that. I'll be number 2. That's okay. Well, that's been fantastic. Thank you so much for coming and spending some time with me. Obviously, if you're watching this on replay later, please say hello and let us know that you were here if you've been sitting just not saying anything the whole time. I'm going to make a blog post as well so people can come along and watch it a bit more widely. That would be lovely. Thank you. That's awesome. Sure.
Thank you for having me, my friend.
Thank you. Right, I think I've stopped the live stream.